Our final speaker is actually here with us in person tonight. He is from down the road. He is a spectacular artist, and he's also the love of my life. Please give a really warm welcome to Lee Stoetzel.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes? A couple of years ago, my mom sent Kelly and I a UPS, and in the box, it was all Gucci. We were in shock, I think. It was like an alien had landed in the house. There was a Gucci purse from the 1980s, my mom's old purse, for Kelly, and my dad's old Gucci loafers from the 1980s, intended for me to wear. Somehow it just didn't jive. The purse ended up with my daughter, crayons in it, in the playroom. It never really made sense. And the shoes, they were on my desk. I just couldn't wear Gucci. It didn't fit. It came from my parents, but it didn't make sense. So the thing I did was eBay the purse, made $135. The zipper didn't even work. It was incredible. This purse was 25 years old, I believe. The shoes, I cut them apart and figured out how they were made, and they are incredibly made. The little horsebit buckle, right, the trademark of Gucci, incredibly well-made thing. So I decided to build them out of wood. They would be, for me, cypress, right? Mahogany, and then walnut. So these shoes are a 1-to-1 scale, and you can't wear them, obviously. They are an artwork. They are emblematic of certain things. My obsession turned also back to my parents and back to my childhood growing up. We had a tenant in a garage apartment where I lived, and the tenant lived for 5 years there while I was in high school. He had a VW bus, and my dad used to say things like, "Don't turn out like Orville. He's a loser." And he wanted, my brother's 5 years younger, he wanted both boys of his to understand that this was nothing to aspire to. Orville was a leftover hippie. Orville was never going to make it. In any case, since I finished art school, all I've ever wanted was a VW bus. Kelly and I, that's not accurate. I bought a VW bus 6 years ago, and it was parked in our driveway for a number of years and used as the model for this sculpture. So the intention in buying the bus, it came from Mexico, it was a California bus. The intention was build a full-scale one. And the material chosen for this is Pecky cypress. So it's a tree that gets attacked by fungus, a cypress tree. Vertically through the tree, grooves are eaten. The tree falls in a river. They dredge. They figure out that the wood's no good when they're planing it. And so the planks come, they look like this. I've done nothing to them. But my concept and the idea here is to try to make the hippie bus seem dated, to make it seem like a fossil, to make it seem old or worn out in some manner. Now, meanwhile, I also restored the real bus and drove it around and liked it very much. In terms of the sculpture, the interior is created in such a manner. I tried to get as close as I could to the real thing. I would go out into the driveway and measure and make sure that the things I was doing in the studio would add up, would measure up, that the seats were about the right dimension. And I think at the end of it all, I was pretty close. I didn't realize quite how hard it would be, in that I thought that the VW bus, being a very utilitarian type of vehicle, would be fairly easy to build. I mean, on paper, they even called them loaves of bread. And it seemed basically like a brick or like a rectangle. What I realized later was in order for it to be very convincing, I would have to do a lot of shaping. In fact, I bent the front pieces to make it round on the front and convincing in such a way. And then in the rear, what I had to do was laminate quite a lot of pieces of wood. I don't know if you can see here. Maybe 6 or 8 pieces glued together and then shape them to try to get the effect like that. Back also on the hippie kind of thing, Easy Rider, probably my favorite movie of all time. I realized that this material might line up well also with the Easy Rider bike. Peter Fonda, after the movie, they wreck in that scene in Louisiana, I believe. The hillbilly shoots him on the bike, and they wreck one of the Captain America choppers in the movie. And they had built 2. After the movie debut and they take the motorcycle to Cannes Film Festival, Peter Fonda puts the chopper in a storage, like mini storage in downtown Los Angeles, and it gets ripped off. And all the other Easy Rider paraphernalia gets ripped off. So when the Guggenheim did the Art of the Motorcycle show, they sent out a mailer, and they wanted to know what people's favorite motorcycle was of all time. And many of the mailers came back that it was the Captain America bike. So it was the Guggenheim that funded the remaking of the bike. The Franklin Mint had subsequently built an amazing little model of this motorcycle. It sells for around $135. So I bought one of those little models, and then using calipers on a little, like 1/10 model, scaled the bike. And it was actually much easier to do than having the real bus in our driveway. I kid you not. Because if you have the real thing there, you feel like a failure every day. You see things that say, about it, the dimension's wrong, the curve is wrong. But when you're dealing with the little model, you say, I just got to go for it now, and so you do. So the bus took 3 years roughly to build, the motorcycle 3 months by comparison. A military Jeep, to me, also had alignment with this particular material, which many people would see and say, it looks shot up. This holed wood looks like you shot it or you burned it. And of course, it's 100% naturally created. Even I couldn't sit there and burn with a burning tip or create that kind of look. But I love that kind of look. I love that kind of detritus and that kind of screwed up appearance. But the military Jeep, I think, was something that we're all familiar with. It also had great plans. So the military during World War II would send out the plans for this Jeep to various manufacturers. So Willys made the Jeep, but also Ford made the Jeep. And in fact, I think they created near 500,000 of these things just for the war. And so the blueprints are available online, and in fact, pretty easy to make. So these are, I'm out of control. These are flat planes. This is a flat plane. This is a flat plane. So I would glue the pieces together like a tabletop and then cut them out, and I think it came off rather well. The Jeep, by my great fortune, was collected. The bus we're still stuck with in the home. This is on loan now in central London for a 10-year loan. The collector has taken it over there. And you can see it's in a natural setting, so to speak. It's in an office complex, but the designers have used a lot of wood and poured a resin floor. So I have had some help in the area. As Kelly said, we live just 5 miles west of here, and 2 students from Westchester came right after they graduated and worked with me on the bus project here and there to do some of the heavier stuff and some of the assembly. They're incredible artists in their own right. Then, unfortunately, they moved into Center City. But the thing they got into and turned me onto was all these young kids ride these fixed gear bicycles now. They're track bikes, right? We would think of them as track bikes that you'd ride on a cyclorama. But they're fixies. And so they don't even have free wheels. They're single gear bikes and they're fixed. So meaning you have to keep pedaling as fast as you go. And when you want to stop, you have to jam your legs in the direction to get it to stop. Incredibly dangerous sport. So what I wanted to prove out was that the bikes are beautiful, they're customized, and that they're in vogue and they're trendy right now. But also that the bike is sort of bigger than the rider in a way. So I built a bike out of Mesquite this time that's double scale. And that's an 8-foot ladder. And so the bike is roughly 8 by, say, 12 feet wide, something like that. This was a really fun artwork to make because it's pretty simple and straightforward compared to like the motorcycle piece, which is full of so many parts. And so I felt like I was getting better rendering individual pieces of it. And the material, which is 100% mesquite, is an incredible wood. It really lent itself to this kind of working. So like making the chain and that kind of thing, you could send very thin pieces through the drill press and the wood wouldn't split. It just performed. In the long pieces that make up the frame and all of that, there's no warpage. It's incredible. It's really the best wood I ever worked with. The piece, what do you do with a piece like that? I mean, I'm still wondering. That piece too, back at the house. Here though, shown the Philly airport has an incredible art program. Leah Douglas there has been running it for maybe 15 years. And so they have these cases in the terminal, and if you've flown out of Philly recently, you've probably seen they're doing incredible programming there. And so in this case that was in Terminal A, I showed 2 sculptures for maybe 3 or 4 months one time a couple years ago, and the bike was part of that. The other piece in the case, and that was loaned at the same time, was this Shell motorcycle work. Again, this fascination of the vehicle I really caught the bug. I mean, if I made a lot of money, I'd have cars and motorcycles and stuff torn up all over the driveway. And thankfully, I don't make a lot of money, and our driveway is pretty clean. I know Kelly's saying. But this was a wrecked bike I got from a junkyard in South Philly, and the driver had laid it down, but it was in pretty decent shape. It was a 500cc bike. And what was interesting to me always about these bikes, which we call crotch rockets or death sleds, was that the owners customized them pretty highly. So you can often see one and the decals have changed around, or the bikes have been painted different colors, or the exhaust has been altered. They've probably been tuned up in such a way. So I thought this would be my ultimate bike, the ultimate way to ride through nature, to experience wind in your hair and smell nature in such a way. So I basically crafted the whole thing like a Martha Stewart project applied to the motorcycle. So I followed the decal pattern on the Suzuki in every way by crushing the shells real small and following all the paint lines. I tried to cover every square inch of it, which proved pretty tough task, but I think if you look at it, you would be hard-pressed to see all the frame and such underneath. I even tried on the muffler to follow the grid pattern and that kind of thing. When my daughter was born, and maybe a year or 2 years in, she's starting to talk and point and say things in the car. I thought it was always remarkable that she would point to a McDonald's. The one thing she would know when we were out, we could be out running errands for 15 minutes. The one thing she would somehow know is that McDonald's. And she really wanted to go. And if you would say no, she'd get upset. And that was fascinating to me with her because I think we eat pretty healthy. I mean, we're members of the Charlestown Cooperative Farm, or used to be. I mean, we really have tried to emphasize that we're not going to be taking you to McDonald's and that kind of thing. So I started this McDonald's kick. I mean, I got really stuck on it. And this is a meal I made just out of wood and veneers. And you can see the fries are using the cypress again. So here, like, these are knots in the wood, trying to recreate the look of how the tips are on the individual fries. The back part of the fry containers is zebra wood veneer to try to look like the striping pattern on the back side. I also built, these were fallen limbs in our woods that had been water damaged and had come down often over the winter, and then in the bandsaw I could cut them. And I realized all the wood was spalted and had the gray streaks through it, and was given, and it kind of had yellowed. A lot of this was birch and beech. And so this fry piece is big. It's 5 feet. It's a supersize. It's 5 feet, 2.5 feet, maybe 3 feet wide for the fry container, and each fry might be 4 or 5 feet long, type of thing. And then we realized that our little house in the country, we have a 1961 rancher out in Chester Springs, and if you know the area well, you know that a lot of the farms and a lot of the property just gets turned over there. A lot of new developments come in, a lot of new construction. It might just be a builder buying a lot and then building quite a large custom home, right? And these houses can be soaring. I mean, 5, 6, 7,000 feet, many of them. In our particular case, on our street, which was all older homes, there was a vacant lot next to us on this side and one behind us. And so 2 years after we moved in, construction started on both lots. And now it's a totally different picture to the neighborhood. If you want to call it a neighborhood, we honestly thought we were moving to the country. But in any case, the funny term I heard applied to these houses was McMansion. We came from New York City, and I had never heard that term until we arrived here. And I thought, that is just so funny. I mean, I was trying to run through in my head, is it that they're cropping up like McDonald's franchises are cropping up? Or is it that they're so poorly built that they're like flimsy in some manner? So one night, Kelly and I were talking about how the houses next to us all of a sudden had changed our whole environment. And I said, I feel like I should do something about those houses. And I was running through ideas, and I said, and the craziest idea of all is I could build them out of McDonald's. Food and stuff, packaging and stuff. She's like, that sounds pretty interesting. So we spent hundreds of dollars on McDonald's food. This is beef. Those are crushed up hamburgers. Any white specks you see are onions. McNuggets. Then quarter pounder. I love quarter pounders with cheese. So quarter pounders with cheese. The inside of the containers are kind of a brown that would mimic like roofing asphalt shingle. So that's what that is. Then, you know, with my extra value meal, they charge you now, but I ask for barbecue and sweet and sour to dip my fries in. I think it's a much better combo than just ketchup alone. They make great skylights. Drink lids here, and you can't necessarily see. Oh, and then my favorite, the Palladian window, right? So that's just a flattened ketchup container. Now, the models were 4 feet wide, maybe 1.5 feet tall or something like that, and then I'm taking a picture of that thing, right? Because the sculpture can't last. The sculpture can't even last 2 days, I'm here to tell you. In the windows, I tried to give my version of subliminal advertising. So from the drink lids, I realized, you know, I could cut out words like diet or even die. So it says die there. This one says diet and that kind of thing. McNuggets mimic, I think, very well the Pennsylvania stone that they try to have, you know, to make it look very, like, old. And then most of the houses in our area also mimic like a mix, like the house had been added onto, like it's been there a while. So there's a stone part to the old part of the house. And then there's clapboard. That's the added on part. So for the clapboard section, I would just use the cheese there. Many of the houses are built, and then you buy it, and then you decide and contract with someone else to finish it. There are never any trees, it seems like. They've been cleared long ago. It's much easier to build on a lot with no trees, so I never tried to attempt to build anything natural here. Many don't have decks or anything in the backyard yet, and often you get delivered your $850,000 house, and they just have a 2x4 against the door going out the back. And it's on you then. You customize it how you want. You put the Christmas package with the lights or any of that. This is my favorite one because this was fillet of fish to mimic the stucco rear portion of most of the houses. So there's no real architectural element. I mean, they might throw in a couple little cheapy Palladians, but that's about it. That's a great house, too. This one has big McNugget driveway, which I like. It's very tall, too. What I've realized is that no matter how we want to have a top-down approach to anything that we're doing, I mean, I think I have great ideas all the time for artworks that I might make. I can't help but be influenced by my immediate surroundings. Either it's my mom sending me something in the mail, or it's the neighbor who's got the lights on and they've got the Christmas package and it's very bright, and I feel like I live in New York City. Whatever it is, it percolates, and then we find a voice and a way to put it out there. Thank you very much.